So in the first 25 verses that we saw last week, here we go. I'm all set. In the first 5 verses, we saw how Shaunak Rishi is eager to hear about the teachings of Lord Kapil Dev to Devahuti. And then after hearing that, Suta Goswami explained how Kardama Muni and Kapil Dev actually, Kapil Dev and Devahuti, what did they exchange? So that begins from verse 6, where Devahuti's questions to Lord Kapil Dev are explained until verse 11. And then, in answer to the questions by Devahuti, Kapil Dev starts describing about Adhyatmic Yoga, and we were seeing those descriptions until verse 27. So that is when got we had like a lot of questions, so we could not cover. So at this point of time, so we will start from verse 26. That's where we stopped. We stopped at 25th verse. So we stopped here saying that how the okay, it's good to go through the whole thing just to have a so mainly she is asking about to Kapil Dev that please dispel this illusion of aham mameti. How do I cut this attachment of the false ego? And mainly she is asking about Jiva and Prakriti, and she is also explaining how she is being tormented by this illusion. And in question to the in answer to the question one, Kapil Dev is explaining how Adhyatmic Yoga consists of Sankhya Yoga and Bhakti, and he just starts to speak about bhakti in one sense, and he says the main problem is the mind needs to be liberated. And how do we do it? What is the process for liberating the mind is to attaching itself to the Lord. What is the process? The process is actually bhakti. So he explains how bhakti is the most auspicious path, and how do you achieve bhakti is through the association of sadhus. And then he goes on to explain what is the characteristics and activities of a sadhu. First, secondary characteristics are explained, and then the primary characteristics are explained, and their activities that are observable, that is also explained. And what happens in that association, that was explained from verse 24 to 25. When a person takes the association, the powerful association of a pure devotee, then that person actually gradually grows from the stage of faith, Shraddha, to the stage of prema. So that's what we essentially saw until the verse 25. So the problem is the attachment of the mind or the entanglement of the mind. And in order to liberate the mind or purify the mind, one has to get attached to the Supreme Lord. And the easiest process to attach one's mind to the Supreme Lord is the process of bhakti. How one comes to the process of bhakti is through saintly association. Who is a saint? Who is a sadhu? So the secondary characteristics, the primary characteristics of who is a sadhu and what are their activities is explained. And what happens in that association is also explained. So in connection to that also, we saw how the association of a pure devotee helps one go through the stages of anartha nivritti and come to the higher stages of bhakti, starting with nishta. And here, now that he has explained pure bhakti, Kapila will start describing about yoga. Because earlier he said Adhyatmic yoga consists of three: Sankhya, Yoga, and Bhakti. But he only spoke about bhakti so far. So he is going to speak about the practice of jnana and yoga also, and and it will bring out the glories of bhakti by speaking about this. So in the verse 26, he explains how being disgusted with sense gratification, thinking about when one is like completely detached from sense gratification and is thinking about the activities of the Supreme Lord and endeavoring to control the mind through yoga. So then he will come to the correct path of yoga. And Vishnu Chakravarti writes how this is actually Bhakti Mishra Yoga. Because in the traditional yoga system, yes, thinking about thinking about is like meditation is on the form of Paramatma, but here the meditation is thinking about my activities, pastimes of the Lord. So it's very, very clear about that this is a process of Bhakti Mishra Yoga. Here the primary element is Ashtanga Yoga, and the secondary element is Bhakti, by which one continues on the path, your path of yoga, made easy by Bhakti. So one's journey in the path of yoga, one's achievement of results in the path of yoga is actually facilitated by the addition of bhakti. So that's why it is called as Bhakti Mishra Yoga, where the yoga in which bhakti is mixed. So, and then after describing yoga in the verse 27, he describes about jnana. So naturally, if he explained Bhakti Mishra Yoga, now he is going to explain Bhakti Mishra Jnana. So he says, thus by not engaging in the service of the material modes, not being entangled in the service of the material modes, by developing bhakti, knowledge in renunciation, and by practicing yoga, one achieves me in this very life in impersonal Brahman. So here also the aspect of bhakti is involved, where the primary element is the jnana yoga and the secondary element is bhakti, and also little ashtanga yoga is involved. So and this leads to impersonal liberation, because people are the those who are actually aspiring, mainly they're aspiring for impersonal liberation. Even though the goal is impersonal liberation, the practice, the sadhana involves bhakti, and especially here it is clearly said that what kind of bhakti, by it very clearly said by developing bhakti and knowledge in renunciation. So in this way, Kapil Dev explains how with the process of direct process of devotional service, that is direct process of associating with sadhus who are completely dedicated to the Supreme Lord in his personal form, and by associating with them one can advance and then come to the level of prema. In that way can overcome the attachment of the mind, can overcome the bondage of the mind. So in the process of devotion service, if you observe, it's very interesting that how after the process of devotion service is begun, there's not so much discussion about the mind as a technical thing. The attachment is created, that's all. And then the person is actually again attached to the sadhu also and engaging in devotional practices. Then the details become how one engages in devotional service nicely. It's not so much about the mind or like what not to do, it's more about what to do. So it's a positive engagement for the mind. And in the process of jnana and yoga, if you see, it is still like there is some level of liberation is achieved, but that is also achieved only by the involvement of bhakti. Vishnu Chakra Thakur says if the element of bhakti was not there, it would not be possible for these paths to achieve any kind of liberation. So after hearing this, now Devahuti is going to ask further questions. So just to recap, Devahuti asked about like how do I what explain about Jiva and Prakriti, and how do I get out of this entanglement of the mind and the false ego. And in answer to that, he spoke about Adhyatmika Yoga, the Kapil Dev, which consists of Sankhya Yoga and Bhakti. And then he primarily explained about the process of Bhakti, how it extricates one's mind, and then the practice of Jnana and Yoga. So now, after hearing this answer, Devahuti is going to have some questions. So Devahuti's further questions I explained from verse 28 to 30. So here, her second question in this chapter is, what kind of bhakti will help to easily attain you or attain the Supreme Lord? What kind of bhakti should I perform in order to easily attain your lotus feet? Because you are giving me multiple options. You are giving me bhakti, jnana, and yoga, but you know what is my situation in life. What do you suggest out of this three? What kind of bhakti should I do? Should I just practice bhakti, or should I practice Bhakti Mishra Yoga or Bhakti Mishra Jnana? What should I practice? What kind of bhakti should I practice which can help me achieve you easily? And then she also asks other questions. She explain the jnana by which one understands the tattvas, and explain the yoga aimed at the Lord for liberation. So how many limbs does it have? So basically she asked one question out of this three, which is better. And then she also asked more details about the two aspects. He did not elaborate much. He only elaborated a lot about bhakti comparatively, but spoke about Jnana Mishra, Bhakti Mishra Gyan or Bhakti Mishra Yoga just in one verse each. So now she has this question, oh, just elaborate about Jnana and Yoga so that I will know what are they actually. And you also give your suggestions. Then if I also can listen to what are those processes individually, then probably I'll be able to make a choice myself. Even though you give me a choice, I also will be able to make sure that the choice is actually suitable for me if I know what are those processes. So that's how the path of uh, Vedic tradition, it's not a path of like just do this or do that. Rather, it gives us opportunities or choices because people are of different inclinations. People are all of different abilities and interest and capabilities. So based on that, sometimes people are given. It's not that all the path leads to the same goal, but at least they are on the path. If not the same goal, at least they are on the path, and gradually they can actually come step by step. So that is why here, even though the ultimate path bhakti is offered, still jnana and yoga are on the side by side offered. They are not like completely neglected. And here devahuti is also showing a proper the attitude of a seeker. I ask you all, she asks Kapil Dev what is the ultimate thing, and also she wants to know the other options so that she can also decide for herself. So from verses 31 to 44, now until that is the end of the chapter, Kapil Dev is going to explain how the answer to the question 2, which is what kind of bhakti should Devahuti perform in order to easily obtain the Supreme Lord's lotus feet. That's what she is going to explain. He is going to explain in detail. The question answer to the question 3, that is explain more in detail about jnana and yoga, that will happen in the further chapters from 26. So in the rest of this chapter, we are only going to describe, or Kapil Dev is only going to answer the question 2 of Devahuti, which is what kind of bhakti should I perform in order to easily achieve your lotus feet. That's the question that will be dealt for the rest of this chapter. So here he first recommends spontaneous devotional service, Raganuga Bhakti or Bhava Bhakti. So, and then he's it's natural, and then he explains what is Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. If you can do this, if you can do this, then do this. That is Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. And then he will also explain what are the great various benefits possible by offering one's mind in Bhakti Yoga. So we will get into the detail and see how each of those verses actually exemplify the Lord's compassionate nature. So in the verse 31, Kapil Dev says that how knowing his mother's purpose, like knowing that Devahuti is what is the heart of, she wants to also glorify Bhakti in one sense. Lord Kapila compassionately describes to her Sankhya, that is enumeration of the tattvas, Bhakti and Yoga. First he picks up Bhakti. For the first question is, the bhakti suitable for the Lord. Tvai Uchita Bhakti. That's what Devahuti is asking. What is the Uchita Bhakti? What is the most easiest way to achieve you? So for that, the answer is, it is the bhakti which is beyond the three modes or which is transcendental to the three gunas. That bhakti is the only one which can help one achieve the Supreme Lord. So the bhakti performed without material desires. So here there is this famous verse that Kapil Dev is saying, Devanam guna linganam anushravika karmanam satvaye vaikamanaso vritti swabhaviki tuya animitta bhagavati bhaktir siddher gariyasi. So this verse can, if you read the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, this verse can be exactly mapped onto the verse given by Srila Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami explains what is Uttama Bhakti. So all of us know this verse, which speaks about how Anyabilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavritam Anukulyena Krishna Anusilanam Bhaktir Uttama. So they say that exactly each of those attributes of devotional service explained by Rupa Goswami in order for the devotional service to qualify as Uttama, to first class, so topmost bhakti, pure bhakti. is also here very much given by Kapiladev. So he maps it. How Devanam Gunalinganam Anushravika Karmanam Sattva Evaika Manaso Vritti Swabhaviki Tuya Animitta Bhagavati Bhakti Siddher Gariyasi. That actually corresponds with the definition of pure bhakti. So, because the senses that serve the Supreme Lord as confirmed by the scriptures and Guru, that is Krishna Anushilanam, Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam. So, mind that is exclusively dedicated to the Lord on a spontaneous level of bhava is superior to liberation. So when one is engaged in devotional service, being not covered by the three modes or karma and jnana, desires for karma and jnana, without any personal selfish desires, and following in the footsteps of scriptures and guru, when one does bhaktir siddher gariyasi, that kind of a bhakti can actually give perfection. So such bhakti quickly destroys the subtle body as the digestive fire consumes food. So this is a one-line verse. Jarayati ashru yakosham nigirna manaloyata. How whatever food is given to the belly, stomach, the fire in the stomach actually digests all those food. Similarly, the bhakti, which is beyond the three modes, quickly destroys the subtle body. The mind is being given as the food in the process. It's a very beautiful analogy. Say how we give food to the belly, and then the belly in the process in the process of digestion, the food is like actually consumed. So similarly, the mind is the food that we engage in the process of devotional service, and in that process, the mind gets completely consumed or purified by the fire of devotional service. So here in this, the spontaneity, the bhava stage is developed either from Vaidhi Bhakti or Raganuga Bhakti. So compared to these two spontaneous types, there is also the Vaidhi sadhana is inferior. So first of all, Kapil Dev is explaining how the first thing, he is explaining the first thing as the topmost devotion service is Raganuga Bhakti, where the person is spontaneously attracted. However, that is a certain stage where people have to go to. If they are not on that stage, then they have to practice Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. That he is going to explain in the continuing coming verses. So, first of all, in verses 32 to 33, he recommends spontaneous devotional service. That just without any kind of reservation. Like Arjuna also, when Krishna is explaining him in the chapter 12 of Bhagavad Gita about devotion service, first he explains that Mayeva manadatsva may buddhim niveshaya nivashishati mayeva atho nav samshaya. He says, just situate your mind and intelligence on me always, and if you are situated like that, you will come to me. You are always with me. You will come to me. But atachittam samadhatum na chaknoshi mai stiram. If you can do that, na shaknosi. If you are unable to do that kind of a complete focus of your mind on me, atachittam samadhatum na shaknoshi mai stiram. Abhyasa yogena tato mam ichhatum dhananjaya. Then you engage in abhyasa yoga. Then you engage in Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. Abhyasa means endeavor. It means Vaidhi is also a path of endeavor, like where you endeavor to achieve that stage. And Mam Ichhatum Dhananjaya, you develop a desire to become like that, to become the previous verse, to become like that, where one's mind is naturally attracted to Krishna. So the purpose of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti is not just putting a tick mark for the rules, rather, it is actually to achieve love of God. So the goal of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti is to go to that level of spontaneous bhakti. So that's what he's going to explain from verses 34 to 38. Means 34 to 38, he's going to explain about the characteristics of a devotee in bhava attained by the Vaidhi bhakti and Raganuga bhakti in 38. So I'll just go through the verses. In verses 34, he says, what is this nature of this devotee, the characteristics of a devotee in this kind of bhava, in this stage of complete absorption. He never desires impersonal liberation. So na ekatmanam me spruhayanti kechit. So he will never desire impersonal liberation. And he is always engaging in the service of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. Mat pada seva virataha. Means he is always attached to engaging in the service of the Supreme Lord. There is he that is his only attachment. There is no other desire that he has other than engaging in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord. And the other symptoms of a devotee in Raganuga Bhakti is he is glorifying the activities of the Supreme Lord in the association of devotees. Sabhajayante mama paurushani. He is always engaged in glorifying the activities of the Supreme Lord, the pastimes of the Supreme Lord in the association of devotees. Sabhajayante mama paurushani. And he says how seeing the attractive smiling face of the Supreme Lord. He sees the attractive face of the Supreme Lord because of his intense meditation. Prasanna Vakta Runalochanani. See my various benevolent transcendental forms. He also takes darshan of various forms of the Supreme Lord. Rupani Divyani Varapradani. And talk favorably with me. He says, Vacham Spruhaniyam Vadanti. He speaks directly to the Supreme Lord. Talks very favorably, means very lovingly. He speaks to the Supreme Lord. Vacham spruhaniyam vadanti. He speaks. He directly speaks. Either it's through prayers or he's having an intimate talk with the Lord, as just as a, in various ways, because it is Raganuga Bhakti. He has probably different one of the rasas he is engaged in. According to that, he is actually speaking to the Supreme Lord. He is actually engaging in discussing with the Supreme Lord. So in this way, from in verses 34 and 35, he is explaining the characteristics of a devotee who is in that stage of bhava. And not that he actually, bhakti gives liberation without separate endeavor, although not desiring it. So the liberation becomes a byproduct of bhakti. If you analyze this technically, to make this statement has a lot of implications. When we say this, liberation, that is mukti, is a byproduct of bhakti. So saying this may seem like very easy for Prabhupada followers, like the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, but it's not. It has so much implication when we make that statement. So if you remember again, Kapil Dev explained three processes. One is bhakti, one is bhakti mishra gyan, the other one is bhakti mishra yoga. In the process of bhakti, as I was earlier also explaining, the mind is engaged in the service of Krishna. Rather, afterwards, after the beginning, after one begins the engagement of the mind in devotional service, the focus is not just purifying the mind, purifying the mind, purifying the mind. Rather, developing attachment to the Lord is the focus. The purification of the mind naturally also side by side happens by engagement in devotional service. However, in Bhakti Mishra Gyan and Bhakti Mishra Yoga, there is a dedicated effort to actually deal with the mind in terms of like purifying it and liberating it. So that's why here in this verse, Kapil they were saying, Bhakti gives liberation without separate endeavor. There is no extra endeavor is required, although not desiring it. It will naturally happen as a byproduct. But for those people who are like, who have the inclination to do yoga, those who have the inclination to do jnana, because they cannot give it up, they are attracted to that. It is just not enough for the jnana or yoga to deliver the mind. For that, they need to take shelter of the process of bhakti. So there, the bhakti is being used just so that they can achieve liberation. But here in the original process, in the process of pure bhakti, bhakti, the liberation becomes a byproduct. The actual achievement is the relationship with the Supreme Lord that is awakened as a result of this engagement in devotional service. And these devotees who are actually on the platform of spontaneous love, they don't desire higher planets, that is the heavenly planets, or Ashtasiddhis, that is the eight mystic perfections that one achieves from the practice of yoga sadhana, or even to that extent, they don't even hanker to go back to Vaikuntha, but they attain all benedictions even in this life, and I award them my own abode. So Kapil they were saying they're not for eager for anything except for a relationship with me, and because they are so uncaring for anything, they're so selfless, and they're not selfish. So I actually award my abode to them. They don't actually desire for anything. All they're desiring is my service. Spruhayanti Kechan. Like they're like Mat Spada Seva Virata. They want is actually devotional service. But because they are so selfless, I offer my kingdom to them. They are not so much concerned about that. and they are not deprived of any opulence. They are not affected by time because they accept the Lord as the server, as the lover, son, friend, etc. in the spiritual world. So here, Kapil Dev is very clearly hinting upon Raganuga Bhakti. He's saying that they accept the Lord as their son, lover, friend. In this way, in the spiritual world, they are no not at all affected by time, and they are not deprived of any opulence, even though they are not aspiring after anything. So, in this way, very clear indication of the practice of Raganuga Sadhana or Raganuga Bhakti is explained. And then now, if someone says, "Oh, this is I'm not there," so for those devotees who are not qualified for Bhava Bhakti, which is actually spontaneous, then why this sadhana is explained. Because why this sadhana is not spontaneous, however, it is based on the stipulations given in the scriptures, the rules and regulations given in the scriptures. So then the Vaidhi sadhana he is going to explain from verses 39 to 40. So here Kapil Dev is explaining how giving up all the attachments of this world and the next. So even these devotees, they are not selfishly attached. Just because they are Vaidhi sadhana does not mean that they are attached to this world or the next. So the devotees actually exclusively worship him. They are not taking shelter of anybody else other than Krishna. So that's why Krishna gives like speaks about demigod worship and all these things in the Bhagavad Gita. And also he speaks about impersonal worship, like focused on Brahman or Paramatma. They are not focused on anything. They are just focused exclusively on the Supreme Lord Himself personally. And and then the Kapil Dev says, because they are actually exclusively worshiping me, and they give up their attachment to this world and the next, because they are endeavoring in that way, I take them beyond the birth and death. I do the rest. What they do is their endeavor is they have to detach themselves from this world, and they have to engage in exclusive worship of me. Then the rest I will do. That is not their problem. The rest of liberating them from this material world and taking them to the spiritual world, that I'll do. So, and then he says, fear of the material world cannot be overcome by any means except by devotion to me as Lord Krishna, Rama, or Purusha avatars. He very clearly explains in the 41st verse how the fear of the material world, bhaya, bhava, bhaya. So the fear of material world cannot be overcome by any means. It cannot be overcome by the means of yoga. It cannot be overcome by the means of jnana, except by devotion to the Supreme Lord. Especially, he says, devotion to me, especially in the form as Rama or Krishna or as Purusha avatars, having personal worship of the Supreme Lord. And he says, what to speak of? And somebody may say, hey, why? How can you say this? Like it seems like a big claim, because fear is everywhere. Like he says, no, yeah, you don't need to worry about taking shelter of demigods or anybody else lower than, what to speak of anybody lower than them. You can just take shelter of the Supreme Lord and no need to worry about any other cosmic authority, because he says, Madhvayad vati vatoyam suryastapati madhvayat varshat indro dahatyagnir mrityuscharati madhvayat. He says that how only by only because due to fear of me, sun is actually working. He is giving heat because of fear of me, and Varsha, the rain god, is working because of the fear of me. The sun god is working because of fire god is working because of fear of me, and the god of death is working because of fear of me. So all of them fear me. So you don't need to fear them if you are taking shelter of me. They will not also cause you harm just because you are taking shelter of me. So in this way, he gives confidence. If a person is like not so confident of just exclusively worshiping the Supreme Lord, he says, don't worry about the demigods. They are all actually fearful of me. And he says, the yogis take shelter of my lotus feet by bhakti, equipped with jnana and vairagya for highest perfection. So he's explaining about Bhakti Mishra Jnana and Bhakti Mishra Yoga in verse 43. He says, this is about bhakti. If someone exclusively takes shelter of bhakti, either through spontaneous devotional service or through Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. They don't need to worry about their destination. He will take care of them. And he says those yogis or the jnanis who take shelter of his lotus feet through by also practicing bhakti along with their jnana, yoga, or vairagya. So for them also he gives them perfection, entering into the kingdom of God, depending on their desires, of course. So here Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains how in this verse of 43rd verse, Kapil Dev is explaining about Bhakti Mishra Gyanis and Bhakti Mishra Yogis. They have mixed devotion, depending on their desire and qualification, they'll be awarded some uh, destination. And then he explains how the greatest benefit can be achieved only by offering one's mind with an intense bhakti towards the Supreme Lord. So the last verse he is going to give his opinion. His the last verse he is giving this. The greatest benefit for anyone that one can achieve, the greatest benefit that anyone can achieve is possible, can be achieved only by offering one's mind an intense devotion to the Supreme Lord. He says, Etavan eva lokayasmin pumsam nishreyasha udayah tivrena bhakti yogena mano mai arpitam stiram. He says, the highest benefit, nishreyasha udayah, the highest benefit can be achieved by men. How? Etavan eva lokayasmin, in this world, but how, which, through which process? Tivrena bhakti yogena, by engaging in sincere devotional service, intense devotional service. Mano mai arpitam stiram, by completely dedicating their minds to the Supreme Lord with an intense devotion, they can achieve the highest benefit. So in this way he concludes this particular chapter, glorifying the process of devotional service. So this is actually the end of this chapter. So if anybody has any questions, we can take this. Before that, I would just give a quick brief what we saw, because I couldn't do detailed notes, so it's not very clear from the slides. So today we saw specifically from the verses 26 to 20, from 26, because in the previous section until 25th verse, Kapil Dev spoke about the glories of bhakti, how through the association of saintly people, pure devotees, one can achieve liberation, or one can achieve, not liberation, sorry, achieve love of God. And, and then from verses 26 to 27, he explained how through the practice of jnana and yoga, one can achieve liberation, but it is not complete without the process of bhakti. They cannot achieve that liberation without the help of the practice of bhakti. So they need to take shelter of bhakti in uh, some way, to some amount. So that is why those processes are actually called as not just jnana and yoga, but they are called as bhakti mishra jnana and bhakti mishra yoga. And after explaining that, he spoke about Devahuti asked her questions. Okay, you are mentioning about bhakti, that is pure bhakti, ananya bhakti, and you also explained about jnana mishra yoga, bhakti mishra jnana and bhakti mishra yoga. So out of these three, which kind of bhakti I should do, which is the best that one should practice? And then she also asked, explain about jnana, yoga, and its limbs. So in this chapter, Kapil Dev is only answering the question 2. In the coming chapters, he will explain about jnana and yoga and other parts, other limbs of yoga in detail. In this chapter, he is going to explain about the process of bhakti. So while answering, he explains how the most perfect form of bhakti is the a spontaneous loving devotion service, and he explains what is the nature of the devotees who practice and what is their sadhana and how it helps one achieve liberation, and how the liberation is actually a byproduct. It's not even the main product. The bhakti gives liberation without separate endeavor, although not even desired by the devotees. Liberation is just a byproduct. And here, this is a very crucial statement that Kapil Dev makes, because this is used by Srila Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, because there is a whole section how liberation is a byproduct of bhakti or it is like lower than bhakti in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So he uses these verses also in that section. And then he goes on to explain how if one is not able to do spontaneous loving devotional service, then he can practice actually Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. So Vaidhi sadhana bhakti also, a person tries to gives up his attachment to the world and also exclusively worships the Supreme Lord. Does not take shelter of anybody else. In that way, the Lord will take the person back home. And he explains how, don't know, because when he says exclusively worship me, some may be fearful. He says, don't worry about all the demigods. They actually fear me. So they will not be bothered if you take shelter of me. And then he says that how just by taking shelter of me alone, it's possible even for yogis and gyanis to actually achieve some kind of perfection. Otherwise, it is not. If they want highest perfection, they have to take shelter of the process of bhakti or the Supreme Lord. And then he says the highest perfection that anyone can achieve is actually to involve or make their mind take shelter of the Supreme Lord exclusively in intense devotion service. Through that, anyone and everyone can actually achieve the highest perfection or the highest benefit that they would like to achieve. So this is how he concludes. Here I have a couple of questions. How activities and mindset of a person engaged in spontaneous bhakti differs? This is question by Ritesh Prabhu, Haribal Prabhu.
Able, Prabhu.
Would you like to ask your question, Prabhu? Then it's much easier.
Yes. Yes. So, Prabhu, my question was how I was still trying to figure out the difference between the two types of bhakti.
Mhm.
So, I was trying to understand that how activities and a mindset of a person engaged in spontaneous bhakti differs from a person engaged in Vedai sadhana bhakti.
Okay. So if I understand your question, you're saying, well, what is the difference in their activities and the mindset?
Yes, Prabhu.
Sometimes the activities may not be very different because the by execution of devotion service, an advanced devotee also in general engaging in actually the same nine processes of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atma Nivedanam. A pure devotee is also engaging in the same, especially in the process of Shravanam, Kirtanam, and Smaranam. In general, there is not so much of a difference, but the intensity of those, like say for example the meditation a pure devotee engages could be, or depending on their advancement, it could be very higher and deep. We also see in these pastimes of Srinivasacharya, Ramachandra Kaviraj, how Srinivasacharya suddenly sits in meditation and does not come back. He's just almost like dead. So all the devotees as well as the family members, everybody was like so concerned, like that Srinivasacharya sat in meditation and then he just didn't come back from the meditation. But they also were sure that he's not just dead or anything like that. At the same time, they couldn't see much of life symptoms also. At the same time, they were not, their heart was saying, no, he's not just dead like that. So they didn't know. They waited for like almost like a day, 2 or 3. And then the news goes to Ramachandra Kaviraj and he comes. So he comes, he's a disciple of Srinivasacharya. He sees, and then he sees like what's happening. So he goes into meditation, sitting next to Srinivasacharya. He enters into the meditation of Srinivasacharya and finds out that he is busy finding the anklets of Radharani, which is lost in the Kund, Radha Kund. So he's assisting the gopis as a manjari to find that. And Ramachandra Kaviraj also helps Srinivasacharya in both of them are now in their eternal forms, and he helps his spiritual master in his eternal form to find, and then they give it back, and then they achieve the blessings of Radharani, and then they come back. So here a person is entering into the meditation of another person, and this sounds like so out of the like is so like far out actually. So this is the one level of meditation that we experience in the acharyas of the lives of great acharyas. And for others it could be like different level depending on their advancement in Krishna consciousness. Even if they are spontaneous devotees, still each one's flavor and each one's absorption could be different. And when you take it, bring it to practicing devotees, for us it's, I can say for others, for me it's like just close my eyes and to meditate on something is quite difficult. So in terms of those activities, there is difference. In general, the in a big way, if you see, they are also going to engage in Shravanam, Kirtanam, and Smaranam. But how they engage, their intensity of Shravanam, their intensity of Kirtanam, their intensity of Smaranam is going to be much more than a struggling sadhaka.
So,
And
Prabhu, if I understand it correctly, the execution is the same, but for a person in spontaneous bhakti, their mind is already engrossed in the devotional service and they already have the love of Godhead. But in the second one, they are trying to achieve the love of Godhead by practicing rules and regulations of devotional service. Is that right, Prabhu?
actually, one sense it is right, and also there is a detail, because in the spontaneous there is also like people who cross the stage of bhava. They are not like fully at there, but still they are like much different from the sadhana bhaktas. That's why Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu categorizes three. He says there is raganuga bhakti, there is Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, but he also explains bhava bhakti as one separate anga, even though he, as if it's a separate category, he explains, because they are neither here nor there, like not in the same bad sense. They are almost close to raganuga, they are almost close to complete spontaneous, but still there is, they are not fully there, so there is some difference, and they are surely not like a normal regular Vaidhi sadhana devotee. So they are dealt with very in a special way. So after these stages of asakti, when a person actually achieves the stage of bhava and is in road to go to the stage of prema, so they are considered a special category, because they are they are very different from Vaidhi sadhana and they are very close to prema bhaktas. So that is a separate special category. So those people also, you can see, they will be coming into this world and they can immediately go back to the other world, their inner world. That could be seen, and these are the devotees who could who you will, while living in this world, if we are very fortunate, we will have this opportunity, we will get to see these devotees actually making that progress, and how they are like, they can manifest those symptoms. Sometimes they can be super intense, and sometimes they can be in their external consciousness dealing with the world, preaching and all those things. But they can, you can distinctly see, sometimes they can be completely on a different platform.
Understood, Prabhu. Thank you.
Okay, I hope I made sense.
Yeah, yeah, Prabhu. Completely. Thanks.
And for the mindset in terms of like external activities, it can look very similar, but the intensity is going to be very different. Okay, so thank you all very much for joining. In case there are no other questions, then we can close the session.
Prabhu, I want to ask a question.
Yeah, please.
Uh, can you give me sharing permission?
Oh, okay, see if you can share now.
Yes, Prabhu. So, Prabhu, you are mentioning you can see, right?
Yes, I'm able to see.
So, Prabhu, you are mentioning that actually I got totally confused by the summary that you provided, because in I think 33, 34, you are telling that he is eh, he's indicating spontaneous devotional service, right?
Okay, yes.
So, but if you see this particular verse, he is talking about, isn't he basically talking about engaging the senses in devotion, which is kind of Vaidhi, which is actually Vaidhi? And then in the next verse, he's basically telling, he's just using an analogy to explain the
Explain that.
super position of bhakti. And
But if you go to the verse 38, and the symptoms, if you see, these are not just the symptoms of Vaidhi sadhana.
38, I think he tells about all the rasas, right?
Yeah, that's what. So that is why Vishwanath Chakra Thakur gives this explanation, how from verse 32 to 38 he is speaking about uh, Raganuga, and then 39 to 40 he is speaking about Vaidhi sadhana. You can see how he explains. Then why does he have to again explain in 39 and 40 as
But
a
39, he
category?
says, thus the devotee worship me in unflinching devotional service, that's like already in Nishtha, right? Unflinching devotional service is
See,
you're already in
unflinching in
Nishtha, that
terms
is
of his
Raganuga.
faith, unflinching in terms of the exclusiveness that he takes shelter. He does not go to anybody else for taking shelter. That's why in the next verse is speaking about all the different demigods. He doesn't go to other demigods for the sake of achieving whatever he wants. He just sticks to Krishna. That is Ananya here. See, Prabhupada's translations, and if you want to, means if you want to bring out this concept that I explained, that how these verses are speaking about spontaneous, and this is speaking about Vaidhi Sadhana, you have to refer to Vishnu Chakra Thakur's commentary. It's not super clear just by reading Prabhupada's translation.
Yeah, and in the purport also, Prabhupada is saying engaging oneself in full Krishna consciousness, accepting the Supreme Lord in all. This
Hmm.
is like a stage of Raganuga where one
No, accepting the Lord as all in all is not Raganuga. The accepting the Lord as all in all is means not going for to any demigod for asking or anything. That can, in that way also you can see, right?
full Krishna consciousness. Okay. Yeah,
That's what
from
I'm saying.
Prabhupada's
Like Prabhupada's
purports.
purport and your translation, if you like certain aspects may not come out completely, you have to take help of commentaries also to see these details. Because Prabhupada is like in general making like bringing out the essence, which is the devotional service. He, if you see the whole section, the idea is only by devotional service you can achieve the Supreme Lord. If you take to path of jnana or yoga, you need to take help of bhakti as a support, even to achieve any other kind of liberation, even it is impersonal liberation. So that will be very clearly coming out from Prabhupada's translation and purport. But this detail is given in Vishnu Chakra Thakur's,
So
and
what
I think it's very much justified in how he explains the verses.
So what are the next few verses like 41, 42, 43 till the verse I'm showing, not this verse. But before that he's again saying something like Krishna says in 10th chapter or 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita
Mhm.
that I am this, I am that,
No, no,
but
he's
still
saying
they
I'm this,
fear.
I'm that. He's saying, see, if you just take the
He is
translation of
saying
verse 41,
it is because of me that wind blows out of fear of me. The sun shines out of fear of me.
me, and then
Indra shines. Yeah,
so
this
you don't need to fear about them. If you go to the translation of the previous translation,
okay.
you go to the, so here, see, the terrible fear of birth and death can never be forsaken by anyone who resorts to any shelter other than myself. So here he is speaking about the devotee who is like practicing Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. He is saying, you take shelter of me. This is why the previous verse, if you, the previous verse means the, when I speak of the 40th verse, when he says exclusive shelter,
Yes.
one me as all in all. So it is very difficult for practicing sometimes sadhana devotees to just depend on Krishna, because they are thinking, oh, if I just take shelter of Krishna, will the other demigods, I was worshipping this demigod, will they cause me any problem? So that way he's saying, oh, don't worry about, don't be fearful of them, because they fear me. They are
Okay.
actually fearing me, so you don't need to worry about them. They will not cause you any harm if you take shelter of me. So giving up all fear of any, like any reservation in taking full shelter, take full shelter of me. By that you will achieve benefit. And then this is about Vaidhi Sadhana. In 43rd verse, he is speaking. Okay, I spoke about the devotees. In terms of by yogis and gyanis also, they have to take my shelter in order to achieve the highest destination,
But
not just by
isn't
their.
this bhakti yogi? Because you see from the translation, the yogis who are engaged in devotional service for their eternal benefit. That's a bhakti yogi, right? Not
That's
jnana
what I'm saying,
mishrita.
Prabhu. The verse can be actually explained in multiple ways.
Okay,
So
okay,
if you
okay,
just take one flow of thought, this flow of thought I took from Vishnu Chakra Thakur. So I will not mix with
okay, okay.
here there.
Both are
But
okay,
surely I can see, if you, after you read Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, you can pick up things here. You can clearly see how you can do it.
okay, okay. I understand. So it's okay. The
And
flow
Prabhupada
of
has his
thought.
way of translating because he has a certain purpose. to keep the essence. He keeps the essence very clear.
Okay. He's just every purport is just establishing how bhakti is superior.
Superior, yes.
That's the thing what Prabhupada is saying in every
Every,
concluding in every
yeah, he's
purport.
not going into the details of. It's not that details are not there. After you read Vishnu Chakur Thakur, you will be able to see all those things in Prabhupada's purport and translation also. But just by a plain reading, you won't be. You may not get it.
Okay.
Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Yes, Prabhu, much
Just
clear
we just read
because I
Prabhupada's
was
translation, then we may not be able to see that link how it is flowing. I think that's where sometimes commentaries come to help.
yeah, I was reading the purport and I was listening you. I was thinking, where are all this? Okay, thank you.
This is Vishnu Chakra Thakur actually. Okay, Prabhu. If there are no other questions, I think we are on time today, 7:57. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai,